Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
This episode of iPad Pros is sponsored by Drafts, where text starts. Quickly capture text and send it almost anywhere. Learn more at getdrafts.com.
But the one thing with Scribble that's been really interesting is I physically write now in my journal. So I might add a quick bit of text here and there from my phone, but if I'm using my iPad and entering something into my journal, I'm doing that with the pencil now. I don't do it with anything else. And so it allows me to be more conscious of my thoughts. I feel like I'm writing more intentionally, and I feel, like I said before, I just have a feeling like it's the right thing to do.
Welcome back to another episode of iPad Pros. In this episode, we'll be diving deep into Scribble and Drafts 22. You'll be hearing from Tim Nahumck, who wrote the Mac Stories review for Drafts 22, and is someone that has gone really deep into the world of Scribble, including writing a significant portion of his Drafts 22 review with Scribble. My sincere thanks to Drafts for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. Drafts is where text starts. Quickly capture text with Drafts and send it almost anywhere. Download Drafts today for free to get started. You'll be hearing more about Drafts a bit later on in this episode, including a deep dive into Drafts 22 with Tim Nahumck. With that said, if you'd like to support this podcast, here are a few ways to do just that. First off, download Drafts on the App Store. Secondly, you can leave a review on Apple Podcast. Every review goes a long way in signaling to Apple to display this show more in search. You can also get episodes early at patreon.com/iPadPros. With that said, here's my interview with Tim, all about Scribble and Drafts 22. Enjoy. Welcome back to the podcast, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So for those that missed episode 79 back in April, can you kind of reintroduce yourself and who you are?
April of which year?
Of this year, 2020.
Wow.
This year's been flying by, right?
I still think it's March, 217th. So yeah, no. So I'm Tim Nahumck. I'm a drafts enthusiast and work in a different industry altogether for my day job in the automotive industry. So that's been challenging over COVID times here. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Cool. And yeah, we're going to dive deep in the drafts in this episode, but a ton on Scribble, and that's one of the big things about drafts. But before we dive into drafts itself, I just want to talk about Scribble. How are you finding this feature overall? What kind of situations are you using this in?
Scribble, honestly, is, there's a lot of great features that came with iOS 14 and iPadOS 14. Obviously, widgets on the iPhone, but Scribble is by far my most used feature now. I absolutely love Scribble. Scribble, for me, it's a feature of the iPad, but what it opens up for me is the possibility to do more in different situations. So, a review on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee, before I would have to sit down at a table or my desk and go through all that stuff because I needed the keyboard. And now I just don't need to do that. I'm sitting there with a pencil. I got a cup of coffee in my hand. I'm able to do everything and use the pencil as the input method. It just opens up that door. And I find myself using that for work. Even just this morning, I had a meeting at 6 a.m. because things are kind of busy right now. I was able to take that call in my living room on the couch with a cup of coffee, making sure that I can, focus on the meeting, but I'm kind of relaxed and comfortable at 6 a.m. when everybody, would normally like to be sleeping. It has just opened up my entire world as far as where I can do this. Over the summer on the betas, my son, who finally got on two wheels this year, all he wanted to do was ride his bike outside. And so to facilitate that, I was able to go outside, sit in a chair, just hold the iPad with no keyboard attached whatsoever, and use that as the input method. And it's just been phenomenal.
That's really cool. So Drafts is one of the apps you're using for Scribble. What are some of the other apps you most commonly associate with Scribble?
I mean, it really, a lot of the system apps, like just using it for messages, using it for notes, using shared notes with family members and whatnot. I've actually found myself using my smart keyboard less because of the pencil. And Scribble. I find myself enjoying that more. The writing input, for a long time, that's something that I really never kept like a physical journal. It's not something I did, but I find myself now with the pencil being able to do that. And when I put a a pencil to paper in this sense, in this digital sense. I find myself being more intentional about the things I say, taking my time a little bit more, and even writing a response to someone, even just in messages, is really just, I am that more thoughtful and considerate, even if it's just to send an emoji. How do I want to respond to this? And I have to take my time, because one of the great things about the pencil is if you have like text replacements, which I use a lot, especially for emoji, I will write a text replacement and I can write that out by hand and it'll automatically convert it. And so
that's great.
Right? So if like for me, the crying with laughter emoji, I most associate that with the word joy. So I write EM for emoji and then joy, and that automatically replaces that. So for me, if I need to respond that way, that's how I do it. And it's been really, really wonderful to be able to use that experience. And going back to your question of apps that I associate with it, it's really any app that you can write text in. Safari, just even the built-in ones are great. Outside of that, I haven't really played around with any like new app. It's just an additional feature of the OS to change maybe the way you're using your devices currently, which is one of the things that I really love about Apple and the ecosystem, where they create a new way of working just by changing a simple feature or adding a simple feature in this case to allow me to do more with my current devices.
So one struggle I've had using it is, say in messages, the text entry is at the very, very bottom of your screen. And it seems that Scribble wants you to be writing almost always kind of in the text box or field. Is that right? Do you struggle with like where you need to write?
Yeah, I do often. It's kind of something that I've kind of learned to live with. I would love to see them change that a little bit. Writing, especially one of the use cases that I have is messages is in slide over, so I can slide that over. And then I'm writing in the tiniest little text box, and I could write about 3 words, and then I gotta, I feel like a kindergartner learning to write again. This is the first implementation. I think it'll improve over time. I wish it was better. Yeah, I agree. It can be frustrating at times to use it in that way.
Yeah. So we have 2 different ways of writing, mostly. We have cursive, and we have print. And for me, I'm finding cursive to be the better solution, just being able to fluidly write a word out versus the print style. What do you tend to gravitate towards?
So I usually use print. In fact, when we were kind of talking about this ahead of time, I had not really tried cursive at all. I have to agree with you, though. I think cursive might be a little bit more accurate, but for me, cursive takes a lot more thought process. And it's just because, for years and years, I took very meticulous notes in college. I was that guy who did all capital letters for my writing, right? I was one of those guys. I'm an engineer. It happens. I would use that. I don't use that now. I use obviously, more the traditional writing. I'm also helping, my 7, almost 8-year-old son to write better. So I have to, consciously go, nope, I can't use all capital letters. That's not how they teach him. So I'm changing that. I find cursive is more accurate.
And it's quicker too.
Yeah, it is quicker, right? It may be quicker for you. It's definitely not for me.
Because it's a one fluid stroke for a word versus picking up your pencil to make a new character every time.
Right. And there's times where if you like stutter with your writing just slightly, it may pick up part of a word and then you have to erase everything and you lose your train of thought, right?
Yep.
Like I think of someone, my mom was a teacher for 25 years and she's got impeccable handwriting. To this day, that's all she writes in. And I can see her using this feature with that kind of writing and it's going to pick it up flawlessly and she's going to love it. But yeah, I struggle a little bit with the cursive writing. I'm sure if I practiced it, and that's something that I think is really important with writing, and I tell my son all the time, is practice, practice, practice. Handwriting is just one of those things where you get better over time. And so I'm sure if I switch to try to do it in cursive, I would probably improve my writing over time, but we'll see.
Yeah. So they are still teaching handwriting in school? Is it print only, or is cursive now dead for kids?
So you want to know something? I don't know, but and not to get all, ranty about this.
Sure.
Like for me, I enjoyed cursive and when you go to sign your name on anything, a check, a house or whatever, you have to sign your name. If they don't teach how to do that, I don't know what's going to happen to people's signatures, right? You look at...
Or make your creative mark. You just make
Right.
your mark.
Right. Like what am I going to draw a cloud and that's my signature? That's not the way this works.
Right.
You have to have a legal signature, especially when you're talking about current events and things like, voting by mail.
Yeah, they verify your signature when you send it in, so it needs to match
Yeah.
your license.
So,
I think.
yep. So it's one of those things that not teaching that anymore would be kind of a disservice to this next generation unless they're going to figure out some other way. I don't know where they're at in the curriculum. My oldest son was taught that, he's going to be 19 soon. But my youngest son, who'll be 8 soon, he's going, I don't know if he's going to be taught that in school or not. Right now we got to get him printing and spelling things halfway decently before we move on to cursive writing and introducing that step.
Sure. So speaking of handwriting, one category of apps that I kind of expected to crop up this year because of Scribble would be some like handwriting learning apps, improvement apps, so people could better take advantage of Scribble. I thought that'd be like a perfect, here's Scribble. It will kind of integrate Scribble into our app and teach you how to write. Do you think that'll come up in, later this year or next year?
I thought about this a little bit, and even though like I hadn't thought about it until you posed that question. I think for teaching somebody to handwrite, I think of the books that my son has where they teach you how to form the letters. And that's almost more like a brushstroke in painting or using a pen. So it's a different style of app than just using Scribble, right? Scribble is your input method versus something like that would be, I would expect that to be more in the vein of maybe in notes, having some pen strokes that way, or, good notes, or, because I've even looked at, could I even make a template for my son in there just to have handwriting?
I know there are some Procreate templates that calligraphers have developed for calligraphy teaching on the iPad through Procreate. It would be fascinating if Apple next year introduced in Notes some like handwriting 101 into the Notes app in some way.
Right. And I think that would be great. And I just think it's more, I don't want to say a drawing app, but it's more akin to a drawing app when you have a background that you're tracing over, because that's really what you're doing is just tracing to improve your handwriting. But then there could be some integration there to, all right, hey, I'm going to take this handwriting skill that I've developed that you've taught me how to do, and now I'm going to apply that using Scribble and see if I get the words right. I can see that coming in the future for sure.
Yeah, back in the iBook Author days, I would be interesting if they update iBooks Author to include these digital textbooks for handwriting that have some kind of plugin to let you do this tracing, and that would be interesting, but that application is dead. So yeah, I'm just curious how that goes, because as you look at the world's going, everyone's typing. People know how to type, but handwriting is definitely going by the wayside for a lot of people.
Right, and honestly, I really hope that this kind of brings that back.
Yeah,
I look at it, like Chinese handwriting, right, or Chinese writing, not really handwriting, but Chinese writing. I mean, that is an art form. If you've ever looked at a video of somebody writing something out, it's a true art form, and it takes years to master. And that's something I feel like we're losing a little bit with the typing. And so maybe bringing it back a little bit in a digital way. I'm overjoyed with this. And I know that sounds really corny, but it really is something where it's like, I feel better about writing again.
Yeah.
I like the way it feels. It's not so much the act. And sometimes it's maybe more frustrating because it gets a word wrong, or I have to, I accidentally select the line above and delete something or whatever. And there's some frustrations and things to be worked out. Mm-hmm. But the way it makes me feel is really the driving force behind me using this day in and day out.
So we mentioned how the Messages app can be a bit frustrating with the placement of the text box. Have you considered using an app like Drafts to write your message there and have some kind of action set up to reply in that manner when you're doing scribbles?
Yes. So I do have message, a message action in Drafts. So I've done that before too, where if I need to either do one of two things, right? It's something that I maybe need to get to later. I'll write a little quick note about responding, and then I can write out that message in Drafts. So I get this nice big screen that I can write in at any point. And then I do have an action to be able to send that, and it's got a couple of key contacts where I frequently message those people, right? Mm-hmm. My parents, my girlfriend, my oldest son who has a phone, and then there's the other category, which then means I can set that to anyone, right? So it'll pop up the messages dialog. I can add somebody at the top and kind of reply. It won't automatically make it so that I can reply to them, but at least it's something to be able to quickly reply to them directly from drafts.
So with the other, it's kind of like a contact list of all your contacts. There's no way to have just a recently messaged list come up.
Yeah, no, not that I've found.
Okay.
Maybe there's somebody out there that's more clever than I am with that, but it just pops up the messages dialog within drafts, right? And then you just write the name of the person. So typically when I get that kind of note that I need to be able to do that, where it's I need to respond to this later, or I need a very carefully considered response before I send this back.
Yeah.
I might even put the person's name, like, hey, respond to Kathy, and then maybe a little quick thing of what I need to respond, and then I'll come back to that later.
You could also, for your custom ones, just use the copy action and hit paste and get back in the messages that way, I guess. Right,
yeah. And with a pencil, the one thing that's really nice is you can draw a circle around all the text, and it'll highlight it. You can copy it, slide back over into messages, tap, paste, and you're done.
Oh,
right.
That's right.
So the pencil gestures even facilitate a new way of interacting with the device in that way, where you can quickly slide through things a little bit more fluidly.
And I almost wish the double tap command had new system-wide things that interacted with Scribble in some kind of way.
Oh, yeah. That it would be nice. The only thing I can see is that for power users like a lot of us, I would love for them to be able to customize the inputs, but they're trying to make this device to fit probably 95% of the people out there, right?
Yeah.
In my industry, in the automotive industry, we're trying to go as wide a range as we can within reason. It's really one of those things where you have to design this for everybody from, basically 3 years old all the way up to into their hundreds, and they're trying to make it as simple for the people at those extremes, and then also for the power users like us who are give me more ways of interacting with my device, please and thank you.
Yeah. I was just thinking, does the undo double tap, have you set to that? Does that work if you write something and want to undo what you wrote? Or
that's actually something I haven't even played with. It's something that my double tap gesture on the pencil really just kind of switches back and forth between erase all the time.
Okay.
Right? That's what I typically do.
Yeah.
So I haven't really played around with it, what it does when it comes to Scribble. I don't think it really works in that way. I think it's more for the palette type gestures, but I'll play around with that after the show.
Yeah. Back in the jailbreaking days, if the pencil was around back then, the double tap, I could imagine that scene going crazy with double tap to go home and stuff like that.
Right. Interestingly enough, obviously on the phone, right, there's the back tap gestures, right? Yep. They're an accessibility feature. And for me, I've actually set that, the triple tap to go home. And I get occasional times where it, thinks I've done that and sends me home, and it's not what I wanted. But it's one of those usability features that's really nice. So maybe in the future, as Scribble becomes more prevalent with a lot more users, maybe that's a request they'll receive, and we'll see if that's something that can be done.
Yeah, accessibility. Add that double tap or triple tap your pencil to do stuff. That'd be great.
Right.
So when the summer started and you started using Scribble, you noticed improvement in your recognition. Have you changed the way you write at all on your iPad because of Scribble?
So in a way, yes. I try to make it so that I write as best as possible so it can pick it up the first time. And then I noticed today, I wrote the word "the," and it was kind of a mix of printing and cursive writing.
Sure.
And it picked it up just fine, right? And so there's parts where I'll say I'm kind of lazy, and it's like, this will get it close enough. Right. And so, I can add just like a little bit of chicken scratch and it'll pick up what I'm trying to say. But I've tried to improve my writing, and by and large, it's been better over the summer as I've been doing that more. And then again, writing to show my son, hey, here's how you form these letters here. You're doing this one incorrectly. Let's work on this. Let's do this 10, 15, 20 times, much to his chagrin and angst, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because he just wants to go and play.
Sure.
I get it. But, trying to show him that it's improved my own handwriting, and I like that.
Yeah. I didn't really appreciate handwriting until I got into fountain pens, and then it was just a fun thing to play around with my expensive toys, basically.
Yeah, and see, I don't use paper pretty much ever. Like on my desk for work at my house, not so much at the office, which is a thing that is just there in theory right now.
Yeah.
On my desk is a dry erase board. It's a flexible dry erase board, and I just use that. I capture some quick notes, and then immediately it'll go into drafts. Maybe not immediately, but I will put it in drafts before I erase it, so that way I've captured it. And there might be some double work there, but it makes it so I can quickly grab it. So
as an image?
No, I don't do it as an image. I end up typing it because what ends up happening for me is I might be using my iPad in my desktop, right? So I have obviously home office like some people do, and I'm very fortunate that I have a sit-stand desk. I have a 27-inch monitor. I plug the iPad into it, so I use that a lot of the times, and I'll use an external keyboard and a Magic Touchpad. So that's my home office setup with my iPad. I do have a PC that's plugged into that as well, but sometimes if I'm using the iPad, I can't enter in notes maybe in the same way. Like I need to pick, somebody said something and I need to pick up something to write it down with immediately. And if I don't do that, I'm going to forget it. So that's why I put the whiteboard there. And I didn't like the idea of just using scratch paper. And I didn't want to have, a notebook on the top of the desk or anything like that. I don't know why. It's just not me. I'm sure I could go down that road, like mechanical keyboards and pens and pencils and all that stuff. Right. But I was like, okay, let me do it this way. Let me see how I like it. And it's been working out. And so the other part of that happens is sometimes I will write down something very quickly, and all it is something that I need to message somebody else so they can handle it, and it's off my plate. And so I don't want to bog down any of my work system with that.
Right. With Scribble, something I found really useful is just in Safari, typing in a website name. Like, have there been kind of just small little uses you found that are really helpful for you?
Yeah, exactly. Doing that or searching or whatever, just those little inputs. It's one of those, again, it goes back to that usability. Any place you can enter text, any place you can think of, that's where it works. And that's the magic of this whole thing, is just that you can put it anywhere you do want to enter text. So like you said, the search bar at the top in Safari, a Google search, a form on a website, anything like that where you have your pencil in your hand, you might as well use that rather than bring up the on-screen keyboard. You can just use that and enter all your information in. It's great.
Yeah. Now, something I've noticed, some apps, when you stop writing, it'll do line breaks. Other apps, it doesn't. Do you know what the logic is in that?
I haven't actually experienced that. And so for me, like when I use something like drafts or even messages, I mean, when I'm done writing, I have to hit the return. So I always use the little box at the bottom to type a return. So if it automatically does that, that's got to be something that the developer has put in special.
Okay. Yeah, just curious about that. Anything else on Scribble before we move on to widgets?
Oh, I think we'll get into Scribble when we get more into drafts in a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So widgets, those are a big thing with iOS 14 and a little bit on the iPad. Do you have a widget set up on the iPad? Are you using that in any great way?
So I am using a couple of medium widgets on the side. I put a picture in for the listeners for show notes if they want to take a look at it. But I use Good Task right now as my task manager, and I really like the updates that they've done. And I use below that is a stack that's got 2 drafts widgets and 2 shortcuts widgets. And I use those mainly when I'm at the home screen and I need to jump into drafts. I still have drafts in the dock on my iPad. I don't on my phone, which we can talk about in a minute. But on the iPad, I need that for the multi-window, right? And slide over and all that stuff. So
yeah,
I like them on the iPad. I am very disappointed that they didn't come. I understand why they might not have, right? With the different various sizes and the landscape and portrait orientations. The other thing I'm wondering is, are they going to come up with something better or different that we aren't expecting?
Right.
And I would love to see that. I would also love to see them, do more choices, because like taking up a 2x2 block or a 2x4 block of app icons to see the weather when I could maybe just see it in one line, like a 1x4 block would be like, I would like a little bit more choice personally, but maybe that'll come over future iterations.
Yeah. So what have been your favorite app updates so far for this iPadOS 14 launch season we're in right now?
So Good Task has been one. The developer there has been adding a bunch of visual updates as well, making it a little bit more usable. In beta now is he added Scribble support, so that's been good. So that you can just write on a header to start your thought of what task you want. Very similar to Things.
So this is an example of, I was wondering, so before this beta rolled out, what happened when you try to use Scribble in Good Tasks versus now? Like how's that changed?
So before, you would have to, if you were adding a task, you'd add a task, you'd hit the task button to add one, and then you could start writing it. Now you can just start writing it on the header, and then all of a sudden it'll pop up the quick entry.
I see. Okay, so that's like an example of developers are doing things to update their apps to recognize pencil in new ways.
Right. And so like Things was a big one that I know Mac Stories did a feature on it for. You could just start writing in the white space, and it would capture that text and then pop up the quick entry dialog so that you could capture the thought. And then it would ask you for all the rest of the due date, the tags, where it goes, and all that stuff. So I can see more apps over time developing that and saying, we are going to use this entry in this way for our apps. I think it's going to be an interesting playground for them going forward.
Yeah, that's really cool because as we talked about, writing anywhere on the screen is really what we kind of want in many ways.
Yeah, right.
And with the Scribble, sorry, going back to the Scribble.
Yeah.
The keyboard pops up sometimes. Like, what's the behavior there?
So I know that in my own experience, if I'm using Scribble, the only time the keyboard pops up is when I hit there's like a little keyboard icon in the bottom, and you can activate that manually. I've noticed though that if you use your finger as the input, not using the pencil initially to say, maybe like I want to enter a line, here on line 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
If you tap there with your finger, it brings up the keyboard. If you write there with your pencil, it won't bring it up.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm doing. I'm tapping with my finger. But yeah, I should just start writing in that space, and then it'll know. Don't worry about the keyboard.
And it takes a little playing around, right? And I think it's more of a, as time goes on, things are going to get better. They'll use their own machine learning stuff to adapt how everybody's using it and change things to make it more user friendly.
Right.
Realistically speaking, it's when you're using your finger to input, okay, now you want to type on the screen. So I get why it pops up, but yeah, it could be a little better, I think.
Any other app updates of note before we move on?
I'm honestly trying to think. This summer has been a little bit hectic from a work perspective. So for me, for iPadOS, it's not been as much. There are some really cool widget things that are going on for iOS 14 that are really nice. And I think there's a lot of updates that are focused there just because of the widgets.
Yeah.
So I think that helps.
Right. Yeah, Scribble's one I discovered. I haven't played around with it too much. It's a pencil kit driven app, which I'm assuming it would sync those widgets you make on iPad to your iPhone where they can be front and center on your home screen, which is kind of an interesting combo.
Yeah.
So the OS updates in general, anything of note you want to chat about before we move on to Drafts 22?
Honestly, like I'll say this. I'm looking forward to reading some reviews about iOS and iPadOS 14 to see all the little details that I missed. But
yeah,
I mean, for me, it seems like a very quiet year, I'll say, from, the big, oh my goodness gracious, we have 10, 15 features. The big features this year, widgets, maybe a little stability, that's questionable. And Scribble. Those are the 3 big ones to me. I know there's a lot of other ones, but
it's funny if they delayed the Magic Keyboard until this fall season. It's like, trackpad support. That'd be a major thing. And because it got rolled out as part of iOS 12, it's like, what else is new?
Right. If this kind of new way of working right now where, and I see it a lot with even something like Drafts where before that was on a release cycle and you had to do a new major release to get more users to be a part of your app, and he had to hold back features. I wish Apple would take a page from that and say, look, here's what we have coming in 14, 14.1 and 14.2, right? Put out a roadmap.
Sure. Right.
And just say, hey, these are the things we're thinking about developers. And you could do that at WWDC. And you could say, hey, look, we're kind of out at 14.5 and that's where we think we're going to end up. And then if there's a 14.6, who cares, right?
Sure.
They should be able to say, here's what's on our roadmap, big feature-wise, and we're going to work to roll this out over time. I would actually like to see them adopt that, because that way they can polish certain features, while other features are still in development. And I think it would just be a better experience for the user.
This episode is sponsored by Drafts, which just rolled out their iPad OS and iOS 14 update. In this quick break, I want to share a little bit on what makes Drafts such a powerful text utility for the iPad. For those that want a really deep dive into Drafts, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to episodes 24 and 79 of this podcast. In episode 24, I spoke with Greg Pierce, the creator of Drafts, about the origins of Drafts, discussed in depth the app at the time of recording, which was May 2018. Episode 79 is another episode I recorded with Tim Nahumck, and we did a catch-up of all of the new Drafts features that rolled out between May 2018 and April 2020. So make sure to check out those episodes for even more on Drafts. Drafts does a lot of things great. First and foremost is capture. You open the app and it's immediately ready for capture on your iPad. Tap the Apple Watch complication, and your watch can be used to immediately capture a dictated note. Speaking of dictation, I've never seen a better way to take dictated notes on the iPad. By some magic, Drafts will endlessly loop the built-in Siri dictation, so you never need to worry if the dictation will time out on you. The second thing Drafts does insanely great is letting you send that text you captured anywhere. Want to send a tweet without getting lost in your timeline? Drafts has you covered. Drafts hooks into all of your favorite apps, including iMessage, Bear, Ulysses, Evernote, Apple Mail, Dropbox, iCloud Drive, Fantastical, Zapier, Apple Notes, Microsoft OneNote, WordPress, OmniFocus, Reminders, Things, Todoist, and many others, as you'll hear about in the next part of this episode. Drafts is the grand central station of text, letting you capture text quickly and get it where you need it right away. Besides all of these great app integrations is the vast action directory that lets you automate your text in powerful ways. The incredible community at forums.getdrafts.com can also help you create new custom actions if you need a bit of help perfecting that perfect action for you. The third thing Drafts does great is letting you edit your text. Use the Arrange tool to quickly move blocks, lines, or sentences around. It's an interface that is so intuitive and fun that makes Drafts my go-to place for editing the order of my text. The text composition window is infinitely customizable to make it just right for you. Drafts is free to use with full abilities to create, edit, and sync drafts, and run actions installed with the app or from the action directory. If you want even more from Drafts, Drafts Pro unlocks these additional powerful features. Create and edit actions with unlimited flexibility to create, customize, and extend actions. Pre-configure recipients for messages, integrate with third-party apps, or take advantage of advanced scripting. Themes and icons allow you to make the app experience suit your tastes, dark, solarized, and other themes with automatic switching. Customize the app home screen with special icons on iPadOS and iOS. Workspaces. Take control of your Drafts lists with saved workspaces, which can restore preferred tag, query, and sort settings. Widgets and sharing. With Drafts Pro, you can access Drafts directly from Widgets. Append and prepend to Drafts in the Share extension on iPad. Enhanced automation. Access Drafts actions and features as services utilizing advanced shortcuts on iOS and incoming URL schemes from other apps. And also you get to support development and make sure Drafts keeps getting better by being a Drafts Pro user. To learn more, go to getdrafts.com. Download Drafts today for free from the App Store. Thanks again to Drafts for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. Learn more at www.getdrafts.com. Drafts 22, your review is up on Mac Stories, and it's a great review. And something you point out in that review is that the app icon can just kind of go away in many cases and be replaced by a widget. And when you wrote that, it's like, oh, that makes total sense. And like when I get my new iPhone in a couple weeks, I could see me setting up my iPhone in a way where, oh, fantastic how the widget is there instead of an app icon. Same thing with Drafts. And you can eliminate a lot of app icons in this way because first off, with weather apps and Fantastical, you have a much richer set of information than just what the app icon provides.
Right. And I mean, I think that might have been when I was going through the whole review, and kind of setting up for it, right? I had two lines, iPad OS 14, Scribble, and that's all I wrote because I knew what I wanted to say. And then the other line was iOS 14, Widgets, Drafts is no longer in my dock, ? And that's literally what I wrote. And I went, huh. Like, it was just weird. And when I first did it, I was like, I've had it there for so long. And it was like, this feels not okay. And it really took me a while to figure out, like, even what app would replace it.
Yeah.
And that app is probably going to change over time.
Are you a 3 or 4 app icon docker?
Three icons in the dock only, please.
Okay.
And thank you.
Yeah, I am as well. I'm just checking if you were one of those crazy people that put all 4, max it out.
No. I don't know why it just looks off to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, me too. I like the 3. It's like less is more.
I only have one single home screen. I don't have multiple home screens. I don't have multiple pages of widgets and all that other stuff. I just have one.
Do you have a deep, rich stack of widgets? Is it like multiple flipping throughs on that?
So yeah, I have 2 small widgets up at the top. It's mainly like the weather. I'm even trying to remember off the top of my head. So it's weather and battery, right? Kind of just checking in on status. And then I have a whole fitness one that's a small one. So it's got activity, food noms, which I really like food noms as far as a food tracking app.
Yeah.
I found it to be better than a lot of the other ones.
Sure.
More user-friendly, more iOS focused, so I like that one. And then I have the medium widget in the middle, which is really just good task, and a larger caret weather widget, just because that gives me more information. And then the bottom one is kind of the same way as it is on the iPad, where it's 2 drafts widgets and then 2 shortcut widgets stacked.
So with widgets, you mentioned this for iPad, you can't drag that into a multitasking screen. That'd be interesting if they added that next year, being able to just use that in the multitasking interface in some way.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome, right? And I think it's, and again, like that's where I'm wondering, what are they going to do next year for widgets on the iPad? Because I think that's going to be something that they're going to have to take a very hard look at and see how they want to use it. On the iPhone, it's a little different, right? Your single app, you can't have the side-by-side. You don't have that same user interaction. And so it really, lends itself to having this wonderful ecosystem of quick, glanceable information, and then, you pop into an app to accomplish a task. The only caveat to that is I wish for some reminder apps out there, even Apple's own reminders app, you could check off a task from a widget.
That'd be great.
Because you used to be able to do that.
Yeah,
right?
that'd be
You
great.
could do that before in the Today widget, but you can't do that now. And that's annoying as all get out for me.
Yep.
I can't stand it. But I like that idea. And hopefully there's going to be some other interactions, even with like shortcuts and what people are doing to their home screens on the iPhone, of jumping from a home screen icon to, the shortcuts app and then over to the app. I think they're going to get a lot of people complaining about that, and maybe they'll smooth out some interactions. So
Sure.
we'll see where that takes us.
So Drafts has a bunch of widgets available. What are you finding useful on the iPad?
So on the iPad, I've mainly stuck with the grid widgets. I did try some of the list ones, right? So there's let me start with those. Lists, just you can choose the different workspaces that you have in there, and it'll show you the drafts in that workspace. It's in beta now, and it'll be out at some point here, probably relatively soon. There were some apps that came out that showed kind of a sticky note, and it was like, here's a single draft that you could have on your screen. And so what Greg Pierce, the developer of Drafts, has done is he's added that in, and so he had enough people request it, and so it'll focus on like the title and custom preview of whatever you want on the inside of that draft.
That's super cool.
It's really nice, especially for like if it's a grocery list or something like that you keep updated. That's a use case I could see. I personally don't use either one of those, the list or this new single note. I don't use those because that's just not the way maybe my brain is wired.
Yeah, I can see myself using that if I was like sent a message to do this on my way home and make sure I see this by putting it right there front center in the little sticky widget thing.
Right. So, I mean, and I'm sure you could do that with a workspace, and you could have, a single, or like if you had the list widget, you could have a workspace that's an important one that's all that's there and you could see it. And maybe with the smart rotate feature, it knows when you're leaving work, you need to be able to see that. And over time, it would get better. But that's not something that I am using or working on at all.
Yeah. It'd be even cooler if it sunk to like the Apple Watch in a large infograph complication of the draft as well. That'd be kind of interesting combination.
Right. And I mean, for me, I know that the moment that I saw the grid widget, I was like, yep, that's the one. That's the one I'm going to use.
So the grid widget, does this have actions as well as your drafts, or what's the layout of that widget?
So for mine, it's workspaces and actions.
Okay.
And there's certain actions that are built in. So like opening the app or adding a new one or using dictation or copying from the clipboard. There's some built-in actions. Quick search is also available there too, which is nice. But you can add your own actions. And this is where, in my review, I kind of talked about it, and it was, it initiated on the iPhone, but it applies to the iPad as well. There are some actions that are quick capture. And I saw some other developers, I think I first saw it with actually Todoist, where you could tap on their widget and it would take you to the quick entry field. And I was like, oh, I already have an action that does this in drafts. I have had two actions, one that does it with a date and one that just puts it in the inbox, where it'll pop up a prompt and I can capture the little note, and then that's it. A task is captured and I'm done. And so I modified those to be able to be used from the widget. And so those couple of actions, even though I had them before, they are very quickly accessible from the home screen on both my iPad and my iPhone. So both of those are residing in my widget.
Yeah, and as we talked about Scribble earlier, I'm sure you could set up actions designed for Scribble. Oh, you got this message. Let me hit that action and do the messages thing.
So one of the actions I actually created for the review, and we all sometimes don't like Twitter, and we don't want to go in there and see, the world falling apart or whatever else is going on. So we want to stay off of that, but we might want to share something into the ether, right? And that's, all of us do it. I have no shame in that. And so I can do that I created a tweet action a while ago, and I'd type a draft in, I'd send it off with a tweet, and there it is. And then I was like, well, I have these other actions for reminders, creation, and grocery, adding an item to a grocery list. So if I get told, hey, we need to add milk to the grocery list, I can just tap on that rather than go, okay, I need to open up reminders, go to the grocery list, and add. And it just is a quicker way to do that for me. So for those types of actions that I can use a prompt, there's a way in drafts to be able to create the text and not save a draft of it, but just have it use the prompt information and send it along. So I wanted to do that with a prompt field, and I created that. And I'm pretty proficient with programming at this point in drafts that I can create that. But I wanted to take it a step further, and I created a fancier version because they added for drafts, there was the addition of HTML previews, and you could do that in a prompt. And so I created this fancy tweet, is what I called it, just because I couldn't think of a better name. And that actually has a little bit larger of a text entry. And so for a lot of my tweets now using Scribble, I pop up that window and there's a larger space for me to write in there. And so again, I can carefully consider my words, because that's a very important thing to do nowadays on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So I can carefully do that. And then at the bottom, there's 3 buttons. I can either tweet it, I can save it, or I can hit cancel. I can write the meanest, nastiest thing. And as long as I hit cancel, I'm good.
Right. So you said it popped it up in a bigger window. What is it, the normal drafts window, or is there some kind of custom view you wrote?
So it's a custom HTML preview.
For after when you compose the tweet, then you see the preview, or
no?
Is it... live.
It's kind of almost live, and it's got a character counter, so it lets you know how many characters you have remaining as you're typing.
Oh, that's really cool.
It was a little bit of learning, and I had some help from a friend of mine, Jeff, and Matt Gemmel as well. They provided some input on how I was doing some things wrong, and I needed to improve them from a programming standpoint, because I am definitely not a programmer by trade, but I picked up enough. And so it was really fun to go through and do a little bit of learning and understand how I needed to change it. So it pops up a custom preview dialogue rather than the standard drafts dialogue.
And is that something you can share with other drafts people? Or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's actually in my review.
Okay, great.
I shared that in the review. And it was, like I said, it was just a better way to do it. And I wanted that character counter, because that's the one thing, and I've done it time and time again, where I will write a note out and forget to check the count of the characters, and I'll send it, and I'll get the alert that says, hey, this can't be sent because you're over the character count.
Right.
And I was like, oh, it'd be nice to have a counter, and I can't do that with the built-in prompts. You have to do the custom prompts, but I was able to find a way to do it, and actually simple online search to try to find it, and then I found it, and it was just a matter of integrating that into the action. So it was a lot of fun to create.
So let's move on a bit to I guess more widgets. Does your drafts widgets change on the iPhone as far as what you're setting those up as?
So by and large, no. For me, the two medium widgets that I have are the same, and I've intentionally done that just for muscle memory. That's the way I like to work. I can see a lot of people going, hey, I might use this for work, and I have personal, and so I might want my phone to have some work related items, and I want my iPad to have more of the personal. My friend Jeff, who helped me with scripting stuff, he actually uses shortcuts on his iPad, and he uses that for work, but he uses drafts to kick off some things, to change items for his clients, and he does that all the time. So it just really depends on what you're using. For me personally, I use the same actions in both places just because it makes more sense for the way I work.
Gotcha. And as you mentioned, you personalize these draft widgets. They're very much customized for what you want to do. So any action can go there.
Yep.
What are some different ideas as far as customizing these widgets to be more personal?
What I did was, and I said this a little bit in the review, I think too, I looked at the actions I was most frequently using and said, okay, how can I utilize this? So for me, just looking at the ones I have, I add things to the grocery list all the time. It's just something I do. I capture reminders a lot, and I could use Good Task for doing that, but also sometimes I just need to get that thought in there. And the muscle memory for me is go to drafts, right? That's my capture point. I do often take maybe a line of text or just a string of text, and I might want to put it into a different format, like title case or lowercase or whatever. And so, like, again, I had a text modifier action, and I made it work so that it would be modified for the widget, so that it would take clipboard text, modify that, and then using the triple back tap, I'd go back to home so I could jump back into the app that I was in, or paste that somewhere else. So for me, what I did was I sat down and looked at my most frequently used actions, not apps. I sat down and looked at those frequently used actions and said, how can I modify it to be used in the widget to make it a little bit more friendly in that way? So jumping into a prompt immediately, or using the clipboard, because that's probably what I intended to do. It wasn't something that I created a whole bunch of new actions, but it makes you think about the actions in a different way.
Gotcha. Yep. Makes total sense.
And the one thing really quick with especially the grid widget, you can jump into your workspaces. And the funny thing is, I actually found, and this came about when I got rid of the app icon from the dock. I would regularly use 3D Touch or the haptic feedback or whatever the heck that thing is called. I can never remember the name.
Yeah.
I would regularly use that to jump into a specific workspace. But now if I need to go to a different workspace, I almost often swipe to go home, tap the widget again, and go back into the app using the widget. It's almost faster for me than using the icon in the bottom left.
Yeah.
So I actually use that a lot to navigate the app to the workspace.
Yeah, makes that much faster. So let's move on to Scribble in Drafts. First off, I noticed in your review you have a little grip. What is that little black grip you have for your pencil?
So it's a grip, and it used to have a red tip, and quite honestly, I don't know where the red end went, but it's a silicone sleeve. So I got a silicone sleeve off of Amazon. I'll link that for you. So it's just a case, and other people have done like the skins and things. It's just something to make it a little bit thicker and a little bit more grippy for me.
Does it charge through that?
Yeah, it actually does.
Oh,
so that's
nice.
that's the one nice thing about it is I don't have to take it on and off. It just charges right through it, no problem.
Very cool. So Scribble and Drafts, how are you using this? What kind of situations is it, during meetings to not have it? I guess we're not doing in-person meetings, but back in the day, no big obstructive laptop set up for a meeting.
Yeah. So it has opened up new possibilities for me. That's just, like I said before, I really didn't expect it. More so than Widgets has actually been more impactful for me in this release cycle. It's been by far the biggest impact in how I use things. For me, again, I keep a digital journal. And I like using a digital journal because I can archive that in the way I'd like to have it. I can include images and all that. And I've written about journaling before on my website and how I approach it. But the one thing with Scribble that's been really interesting is I physically write now in my journal. So I might add a quick bit of text here and there from my phone. But if I'm using my iPad and entering something into my journal, I'm doing that with the pencil now. I don't do it with anything else. And so it allows me to be more conscious of my thoughts. I feel like I'm writing more intentionally, and I feel, like I said before, I just have a feeling like it's the right thing to do. And so I will sit down and, maybe in the evening, I will write down some thoughts in my journal, and I'm actually writing in my journal a lot more because of it. It just feels like the right input method for something so personal.
And that's a draft workspace?
So yeah, it's in my drafts workspace, and I actually have an action in shortcuts or I guess a shortcut that will kick off and it grabs some information like some weather for the day. If I wore my watch, it'll grab how much time I slept, things like that. Just some little bits of just quantifiable data. I even added how many days it's been since we as a state locked down for COVID, just to have that kind of in there. And I'll take that out when the timing's right. But
yeah,
just to have that in my mind. Oh, we've been doing this for this long. I have those sorts of things in there.
And do you have topic starters of reminding you to share stuff about certain aspects of your life, or?
No. So I don't do that. What I've actually done, I've split my journal up into something I call quick hits, and then I will do entries. So quick hits, I mean, it's literally quick little bits of information, like things that maybe bother me or things that were great. And I'll just capture little bits of, this is what's been happening through the course of the day. And then if I really want to reflect on something, I will write a long entry. And I mean, sometimes for me, a single entry of a journal is, it's just one line. And that's all I could muster for the day. But at least I wrote in it. And then there's times where I've written page after page. And I say page after page because I export that to PDF at the end of it. So once that's done, I export a PDF of the journal so it's captured and I don't have to mess with it in another format.
Gotcha. And you'll integrate photos occasionally?
Yeah, so what I'll do, kind of my workflow for that, because I do create a PDF at the end of it, I'll save those temporary files to Dropbox and then get the web link, generate the markdown image in line, and it'll just add that into the journal format.
And that's a daily export or weekly? How often do you do it?
I could do it daily. Oftentimes I forget just with how busy I've been. So I could wait an entire month and then go through and do each individual one. It just depends on how often I stay on top of things.
Gotcha. Any other ways Scribble has changed how you use drafts?
Two things, actually. The first one being that I've started to write posts in drafts using nothing but Scribble. And in my review, I actually wrote the entire section on Scribble using Scribble.
Oh, that's great.
I had talked to Greg a little bit about that just in the Slack channel, and I just said, "Hey, I'm going to do this." And he's like, "I don't think that's a good idea because it's probably just good for quick entry." I thought about it for a little while, and I was like, "You know what? I'm going to challenge myself a little bit and see what this is like." And I spent one morning, again, the picture that's in the review is literally I thought to take a picture of it, and I don't know what got me to think that, but I was like, this would look good. So I just took a picture. I sat down in a chair, and actually at the time I had a severe muscle spasm in my neck. So me typing that out over a desk would have been excruciating. And I sat down and wrote that entire thing in like an hour. And it just, like I said, the feeling of just writing it out was it was liberating. It was great. And so I've started to apply that to other things that I might want to write about with drafts. And I've been doing outlines in the same format because you can do a quick little dash and then write something out, and you can make lists in that way. So I'll do that to kind of outline maybe what I want to do in a post. But I find that format now to just be something where I have to really watch what I say, and I'm not just spewing out words on a keyboard. I can type way faster than I can write. So I'm just finding myself, taking the time, being thoughtful, being considered and measured with my statements. So maybe I don't write, a couple 1,000-word posts. I'm really writing 700 and that's it, but it's more concise and it's better.
Yeah. I almost want to see a developer create a way to you're writing, and it doesn't even try to translate it until you tell it to, and it's all there until you're ready for it.
That I would love.
Kind of like GoodNotes. Yeah, like GoodNotes is designed for handwriting without conversion. I'd love it to like just write in peace, and then when you're ready for it, do the conversion.
Right. And I know Apple does that with their Notes app, but I would love to see that be extensible to other apps. And
almost to retain the Scribble version too, so you have both versions with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I agree.
Yeah, I'm curious how far developers can go with what Apple gives them. It might be just you're gonna handwrite and it'll convert it when we want it to, and you can't do anything else besides that.
Yeah, and so, in getting back to your question, like what other ways has this helped? Like one of the things that's been really interesting, and I didn't really mess with it before, kind of really sitting down to think about the review at first, and some work stuff happened for me where I got a promotion at the end of last year, and then I got kind of another promotion in May, and then I got handed a whole lot more responsibility all of a sudden, and I kind of had a little bit of a freak out panic moment and said, this is not going to work. My current system is going to break really fast. And I said, all right, I need to sit down, and I wanted to focus on everything that I was responsible for. And what I ended up doing was, again, sitting down and trying to be very intentional. I sat down with the pencil and drafts, and I started just writing out, okay, here's one area of responsibility, here's the other. And I just went through and just listed at a very high level what I am responsible for. And then with the feature that's been added to drafts of the wiki style linking, I was like, oh, I can simply convert these into new drafts where I just put a double bracket around the title that I want. And then now I can tap that. And if a draft is not already present, it will offer to create one. And so I ended up creating a whole system, like a whole wiki for me for work. And some of those things have different bits of data that I need to retain. Some of them are tasks. So I have this whole system now. And I gave an example of using that in the Mac Stories review so you can kind of see it visually. But it really was one of these things where I was able to just sit down and clear my head and do, almost like a traditional GTD brain dump of here's the things I'm responsible for. And then with each project, really focus on, all right, I need to do these 3 things. And then if I think of other things, I have a place now to go and add that. And I didn't have that before. And everything was kind of in its own little area and a mix of things that I work in Google. And it just was not working. And so using drafts with the pencil really kicked me in that way to focus everything that I was working on and just kind of get it out of my head. So even though it's not necessarily like some massive improvement in a feature of iOS and drafts adopting it, what's gone on is, a feature that was existing within drafts has been made better by adding this pencil support, because I can quickly do these things and have this information be much better organized for me in a whole new way and really stay on top of everything I need. And we're talking a lot about drafts here, but I would say that there are other apps out there that you could probably do the same thing in. There's other apps that you could take the pencil with Scribble and realize that you could work within that app in a completely new way. That's what I would encourage anyone out there to do, is just spend a little time, little thoughtful, considered time, a Saturday morning with some coffee, and just sit down and explore what you can do with some of your current apps and the current ways of thinking, and it may open new doors and new possibilities for you.
The double bracket in Scribble, is it recognize the bracket pretty nicely in Scribble? Any tricks in making sure that's recognized well?
So you really have to exaggerate it, is what I found. And I would do those one at a time. And after about the first few times I did that, I was like, well, I can continue to do this. Or because I create actions, I already had a smart bracket action, and I just made it to be a smart double bracket. It was pretty easy to create. Took me all about 5 seconds and I was done. But it's something where I can circle the text with the pencil, right? And then hit that one tap, and it makes the double brackets around it. So that I ended up using that. And again, those links are all in the review.
Okay, great.
But yeah, so it's one of those things that I just, obviously with drafts actions, you can use your pencil to still tap those tap targets. So I don't have to stop using the pencil to be able to kick those actions off. And I can just really quickly and fluidly do all of these things, which is great.
And the wiki system, is there an easy way to export that anyway, or is it kind of in there and you export individual draft sheets one by one?
So there are compiling, and I don't have that in the review, but there are ways to compile it. And there's actually, I believe, an action group, and I'll see if I can find that for notes. It's one of the, I forget what they call it, but basically it takes all of the double bracketed text that you have in there, and it'll take from those other notes and basically merge all those things together into one document, or one new draft effectively. So if you were to do, say, like some long form writing, what I could do is you could, all right, I have an intro or a table of contents, and to create and export a review for somebody to read or mark up, I could run an action like this where it would add all those sections together into one giant draft, and it does all that heavy lifting for me. So those tools are available, but you have to know a little bit more about what you're doing.
Gotcha. Very cool. Any other nice little tweaks and changes that have been added to Drafts 22?
There's a few that I cover in the review, and I mean, mainly visual tweaks. Who doesn't love a visual tweak? And kind of fits a little bit more with iOS 14, especially in the menus. There's some usability improvements with some other things, but I mean, by and large, those are the two biggest features: is the use of the widgets and what you can do action-wise and everything, and then of course Scribble, and I call that a feature of drafts, even though it's not necessarily a unique feature of drafts, but it does open up those new possibilities for a user, and that's why I think it's just one of those transformative features that hopefully, again, as developers can add things in the future, maybe there's some cool, exciting things that could come to drafts in due time.
For sure. And there's a bunch of new keyboard shortcuts. How do those work?
So keyboard shortcuts, if you're connecting to a keyboard with drafts, which if you haven't done that, you need to. There's new arrow key, like you can use the arrow keys to kick off actions as well in conjunction with some of the other keyboard presses. So it gives you more actions at your fingertips, right? So
yeah,
if you have an action existing already and you're like, I have a key map already to that, I would really like to use that letter because maybe it starts with that, but I need another modifier key and I'm all out. Well, now you have the ability to do that. So it's just another way that users can add functionality to their existing way of working with keyboards.
And Drafts is one of the apps like Ferret that lets you set up some custom keyboard shortcuts. Is that what you're kind of hinting at here with the command key and arrow key? Is that right?
Yeah, Drafts can do the custom keyboard shortcuts, and there's certain ones that the system uses. Obviously, cut, copy, paste, and bold
Command
italics,
H
all
would
that
not
stuff.
work,
right? Yeah, Command H wouldn't work, but you could do Command Shift H.
Yep.
You can do other things within drafts using those keyboard shortcuts. Like for me, I use, when I'm using the keyboard, I'll use Command 1 through 8 to bring up any of my workspaces. So anytime I'm connected to a keyboard, I can quickly switch between workspaces and jump around the app just by simple commands using the keyboard for that. So again, the added feature for Drafts 22 is just really further ways to do that.
And those are set up when you're creating the actual actions, right? And kind of the setup process.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else about Drafts 22 or iPad OS 14 that we haven't covered that you'd like to before we wrap it up?
I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, with these new possibilities, I would just encourage everyone to go and try something new, try something that they've done existing, and try it in a new way. And I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for a lot of people.
Excellent. Yeah, Scribble is one of those features that you don't really understand its full power until you try using it yourself for a little bit and just seeing about how you can use it. And it's liberating with this magic keyboard, being able to take your iPad on and off so fluidly and just, I'm in Scribble mode. Let me just relax and try using my iPad in Scribble mode and see how that goes.
Right. That's something that I when the Magic Keyboard came out, right, a lot of people were like, well, this seems a little weird. How can you take the iPad off and, write something down in like GoodNotes or whatever you're using, Notes. And now it's like I'm docked at my desk, and if I need to get up and use it somewhere else, I can use the pencil as that input. It just, like I said, it's very freeing and it's great to be able to use it in so many different locations. I've often said to people, I can use it in new ways. And what I really mean to say is you can use it in different places, in bed, on a couch, wherever, sitting outside. It opens up a whole new way to use the device. It's just really great.
Yeah. Well, with that said, where can people find your awesome review?
Well, so you can find the review, Mac Stories. Thanks to Federico and John for having me be a part of that again. I always like writing for them. You can find my writing at nahumck.me, NAHUMCK.me. And I'm on Twitter at Nahumck. So those are the main places you can find me.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time again, Tim. This is wonderful learning all about the new Drafts update and Scribble, which I'm fascinated by as well.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Tim.
Well, that was my interview with Tim all about Scribble and Drafts 22. My thanks to Tim for his time recording this episode, and thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. My thanks again to Drafts for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. As you heard in this episode, there is so much power and versatility with Drafts. Learn more at getdrafts.com and download it today to get started with one of the best text utilities for iPad OS. With that, thanks again for tuning into this episode of iPad Pros, and I'll talk to everyone again real soon.